In a world grappling with uncertainty, these nations have become symbols of fear and division. Their actions, their policies, and their histories have shaped the global landscape, often leaving a trail of conflict and suffering. Let's delve into the stories behind the headlines, the people behind the politics, and the complexities that have made these countries some of the most hated in the world. North Korea. For decades, the world has watched North Korea, a country shrouded in mystery, isolation, and fear. A regime led by the Kim dynasty, driven by an unyielding thirst for power, has held its people captive, while threatening the peace of nations far beyond its borders. Since the Korean War, North Korea and the United States have been locked in a bitter standoff. The North's defiance, its nuclear ambitions, and the relentless rhetoric of destruction have left Americans in a constant state of dread. From its missile tests that ripple through global security to the terrifying threats of annihilation, North Korea represents a ticking time bomb on the world stage. But behind the political drama, there's a tragedy. The people of North Korea, trapped within their borders, are among the most oppressed on Earth. Starvation, forced labor, and brainwashing have become their daily reality, while the world watches helplessly. A nation divided, a people forgotten, and a looming threat that refuses to fade. North Korea, a symbol of the darkest fears of the modern world. Iran, a land of ancient history, culture, and wisdom. A country whose people have known beauty, music, and poetry for millennia. But today, the name Iran is often linked to fear, mistrust, and anger. For decades, the relationship between Iran and the United States has been a constant roller coaster of rising tensions, broken promises, and bitter resentment. The 1979 hostage crisis set the stage. American diplomats held captive, the American flag burned, the world watching as the flames of hatred between the two nations flared up. It left an indelible scar. The nuclear standoff has been the spark that ignites the fire. Iran's nuclear ambitions, its involvement in proxy wars across the Middle East, and its defiance of international pressure have driven the U.S. into a corner. Every new missile test, every public declaration, feels like a threat to the very foundation of peace. Yet beneath the politics, beneath the headlines, are the people of Iran. Caught between their government's actions and the world's judgment, the sanctions have crippled their economy, their hopes, their future. They are a people longing for change, longing for peace, but trapped in a cycle of conflict they did not choose. Iran, a nation of contradictions, beautiful, ancient, yet bitterly divided, a country where the pain of the past continues to haunt the future. Russia, a land of vast beauty, untold history, and unshakable pride. From the steppes of Siberia to the grandeur of St. Petersburg, Russia's heart beats with the weight of centuries. Yet today, Russia's name brings with it a shiver of unease, a knot of distrust that tightens with each passing year. For much of the 20th century, Russia and the United States stood as titanic foes in the Cold War, locked in an ideological struggle that threatened the world with the shadow of nuclear war. The scars of that era linger, and for many, Russia's return to aggression, its invasions, its cyber attacks, its attempts to control, feels like an old wound being ripped open once again. In recent years, Russia's actions have made the world tremble. From meddling in the very elections that define democracies to the brutal invasion of Ukraine, a war that continues to tear apart families and nations, Russia stands as a dark force, its ambitions casting a long shadow over global peace. Venezuela, a land of unimaginable beauty, lush landscapes, and vibrant people. Once one of South America's wealthiest nations, brimming with oil and promise, today it's a country on the brink of collapse, caught in the grip of a devastating crisis. The people of Venezuela, once proud of their country's prosperity, now face hunger, inflation, and despair. The oil that should have been their lifeline has become a curse. As the government led by Nicolas Maduro clings to power, the nation sinks deeper into poverty, its citizens driven to the streets in search of a future that seems further out of reach with each passing day. And yet, through the suffering, the Venezuelan spirit refuses to die. In the face of oppression, families continue to fight for survival, risking everything to escape a broken system. With every tear shed, every protest fought, Venezuela's people cry for change. But their cries are drowned out by a government that holds tight to power at any cost, indifferent to their pain. China. A civilization that stretches back thousands of years, where dynasties rose and fell, where ancient wisdom was born, and where power once rested in the hands of emperors. Today, that power is held by a government that commands one of the most formidable nations on Earth. In mere decades, China has transformed itself from a war-torn, poverty-stricken country into a global superpower. Its factories churn out the goods that the world depends on. Its economy has risen to become the second largest in the world, and its military might is felt across every corner of the globe. But beneath the surface of China's meteoric rise lies a darker story. A story of control, a story of surveillance and oppression, where the government watches every move, every word, every thought. Where dissent is silenced and freedom is an illusion for many. The world watches in disbelief as China crushes dissent in Hong Kong, silences its own people with a relentless surveillance state, and continues to carry out one of the most brutal campaigns of cultural erasure against the Uyghur people. The cries of those who dare to speak out are smothered before they can even reach the air. Afghanistan. A land of ancient cultures, of proud people and deep traditions, a country caught in the crossfire of history. For centuries, it stood as a gateway between East and West, its mountains echoing with the footsteps of conquerors, travelers, and dreamers. But today, Afghanistan is a place of pain, a place of broken promises. For over 40 years, Afghanistan has been at war. The Soviet invasion in the 1980s, the rise of the Taliban, and then after 9/11, the United States' longest war. The war that was meant to bring peace, but instead brought destruction, the war that has scarred a generation, torn apart families, and left the country in ruins. And then, in 2021, the world watched in shock as the United States pulled out, leaving behind a country in chaos. The Taliban returned to power, and the promises of a better future. Cuba, a land of rhythms, of music, of colorful streets and vibrant culture, a place where life pulses through the air like the beat of a drum. But beneath the warmth of its sun, beneath the beauty of its shores, there lies a story of pain, of broken dreams, and of a nation torn between past and future. For over 6 decades, Cuba has lived in the shadow of conflict. The revolution that promised liberation has become a cage. The embargo, imposed by the United States, has strangled the economy, leaving a nation isolated and struggling. And yet the government of Cuba, under the Castro regime and now under Diaz-Canel, remains in control, clinging to a vision of communism that has long since outlived its purpose. But there is another story, one of defiance, of young Cubans yearning for freedom, for the chance to live without fear, without repression. The streets of Havana, once full of music, now echo with the cries of those who want more opportunity, more rights, more hope. The government responds with silence, with violence, with an iron grip. The world watches as the Cuban people fight for their voices to be heard. And then there are the ones who leave, those who risk everything to escape a country that has broken their spirit. They leave in rafts, in boats, in search of a life that seems impossible to find on their own soil, but they carry with them the love for their homeland, even as they flee its suffocating grasp.